Okay, recording is on. So I see we have a lot of people joining us from all over the country. There's a Hawaii, there's a Newark, New Jersey, Connecticut, Sandy from California. So we have quite a bit of variation tonight. So that's great. Appreciate everybody taking the time to join us. Hopefully you'll learn something from this. I think that's the goal of our group, is to really educate and inform everybody with what's coming out and what's there and what you cannot use inside SharePoint. So tonight's topic is going to be focusing on modern versus classic. This is really like a hot item right now. And on the phone, we have three other experts in the field. So I'll pass it over to them. They can do a quick introduction to themselves. Let's start with Matt Wade. Matt, why don't you tell us where you're from and what you do in SharePoint?
Sure, Matt Wade, SharePoint Office 365 migration sort of guru, originally from upstate New York, spent a couple of years in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and now I'm in the DC area. And right now I'm working more in the AI bot sphere than anything else. And I've done a couple of migrations into both classic and modern spots. If you've seen the periodic table of Office 365, that's me. That's how most people recognize my name.
All right, thanks, Matt. Can you do me a favor and turn your mic up a little bit, or can you adjust that? A little less.
How's that? Any better?
It's a little better.
Let's see what I can do there.
All right. Yeah, just trying to get. It's hard to collaborate with all these different audio equipment. All right. So who do we have next? So Mike. Mike's in the car, joining us from his car. He's so determined. Mike, why don't you?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Mike Madarani. I am from Ottawa, Canada. I've been doing this SharePoint product thing that we all love for about 16, 17 years right now. Doing a lot of end user adoption, migration to the cloud, helping end clients and users to know what's out there in Office 365. Doing a lot of deployment right now. Still doing classic and doing modern, more on the modern side right now. So a lot of migration and a lot of architecture and governance into Office 365.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Okay, so last we have Jared, a good friend from Connecticut. I just unmuted you. I see you called in. I hope that's you.
Yeah, that's me. Hopefully you can hear me okay?
Right. Yeah, we hear you.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom, for the intro. Yeah, so I'm Jared Matfess. I'm work for Slalom Hartford, and so I've been doing SharePoint for a bit. These days, though, I've got a team of folks that are doing lots of SharePoint development workflows, intranets, and they're sticking me in a lot of these sort of helping clients move to the cloud, so getting ready for the cloud or moving tons of workloads into O365. So, and I'm actually right in the middle of building a training site for folks using the communication template and some of the modern web parts. So happy to share what I've found so far and compare that to what I used to do in the classic side.
Great. Thank you, Jared. So the format of this meeting, it's very informal. It's really just a discussion. So any questions that you have, feel free to throw it in the chat window. I'll try to pick it up and stop as we go through. I'm going to be doing most of the walkthrough and presentation of different elements, and we're going to ask our experts their opinions and get insight from them as well. So with that being said, let's begin. Talk about why we're here. Okay, I got a lot of screens up, so I'm just getting used to this. Here we go. So the purpose, provide some overview of the modern capabilities inside SharePoint. We're going to do short demos. We'll have QA and ask the experts. I just mentioned that. All the panel members, I invited them all. They all have a different take on the situation with modern and classic. They all have a different experience, and it's a relatively new product. So we're going to see what they've done, or we're going to talk about what they've done, and especially just get inside information on their experience. So sorry, I'm sniffling already. Modern can sometimes feel a little bit like this. Like which way do you go? Do you take the red pill or do you take the blue pill? And we're going to here to hopefully show you that it's not, you could do one way or the other, and it's not going to be that bad. All right, next one. So what is classic and what is modern? These are the points that we're going to answer tonight. Why should you care? What are you going to take away? What can you get out of this? Hopefully you're going to get something out of this topic. And then we're going to demonstrate the differences between modern and classic. So the first aspect, we're going to take a look at site architecture. All right, so getting noises. Site architecture. So overview of this thing. Site architecture is quite different in modern world. There's a flat architecture, and then in classic world, it's more hierarchical. So you have layers and structures, subsites and sites. What do we lose and what do we gain going back and forth? What's Microsoft's thoughts behind the change? Is this a good approach or is this a bad approach? We'll have to talk about the global navigation strategies and global taxonomy and how you would go and develop with SPFX and what's the impact. So these are the points that we're going to talk about in the next coming slides, and I'm going to go through a couple of slides, and then we'll hear from the experts and what their opinion is on this topic. So what do I mean versus flat versus hierarchical? So this is your typical classic SharePoint site build out. So, for those people as IT guys, you might have spent weeks, months, days planning like your information architecture, really down to the sub-site and the page. That's no longer going to be the case in modern. So these kind of patterns of the site collection, one top-level site collection, and then multiple sub-sites underneath that, and then under that, multiple sites. That's no longer the pattern in modern. So the modern approach is more, oh, that was a cool animation. I didn't know I did that. So the modern approach is more like this. So every site that you create in modern is actually a site collection. And under those site collections, you're going to go and create pages and sub-site. Audio's a little low. So yeah, thanks for that. Coming through very slow on the display. Okay. All right. Thanks for the comments. I'm going to try to talk into the mic a little bit closer, just so it's a little louder. All right. So here's the site collection. Here's the site architecture for a classic site. And then some of you might be saying, every site really a site collection? Like what is the deal with that? So I'm gonna open it up. I'm gonna put up a slide. I want to get the other people's take on this. So what do you feel, Mike, with information architecture? I mean, how do you feel about this new pattern of the flat versus the hierarchical structure?
I love it and don't love it at the same time. From my perspective, if you go classic and you have this site collections with subsites and many level, right now we have limitations with the SharePoint Online that you're going to have a maximum of 2,000 subsites per site collection. Now, I am always against and opposed that you have many different levels and a lot of sites, and I've always talked about let's create multiple site collections just to make the information architecture a little bit nicer, easier to manage. So from that perspective, I really love the fact that we don't have limitations on when you create a site collection and you have a limitation of 2,000 subsites, because we can't create subsites, or you can't create it, but it's not going to work properly for you with modern. So that limitations is gone, and the limits on the site collections is way higher, so we can have hundreds of thousands, I think 200,000 site collection right now in Office 365. So the limitation is we have a lot more flexibility to create multiple sites. Then from my perspective, going modern versus where you go as a team site or a communication site, and having that flat level that we have insights, or we can manage different teams and collaborate in different way, in a modern way, with different groups, makes for me a lot more sense. We're not complicated things. Yes, there are governance that we're going to talk about, and how do you manage having that flat level at some point. but with search capabilities and what's coming up with features that we're going to talk about in a few slides, I am all for the flat architecture versus what we had before, where you can go and have to have multiple subsites, and at some point you're going to hit your limit, and you have to start spinning off another site collection.
Great, thanks for that. That was a lot of information there, but yeah, I agree with a lot of those points. You know, I'm not an information architecture guy, so I can't weigh in on that. Jared, what are you seeing with your clients? And you know, you said that you're implementing the modern communication sites. How do they feel about that, and how are you solving some of the issues with navigation that hub sites aren't there yet?
Yeah, so that's a great point. Before I get to your exact question, one thing I do want to say is I've actually ironically been sort of preaching the site collection model, but before that was sort of like a requirement. And the real reason is when I first started dabbling with SharePoint, started doing subsites. First, it's like, cool, right? You've got that hierarchy, but managing permissions just became a huge nightmare. And people, what inherits what, and subsites did you break permissions on the subsites, and like, but how do you as an admin, or a business admin? Like the complications that you get with subsites from a permissions management perspective is just a nightmare. So, I mean, I'm kind of all for you define what this container is going to be, what the purpose of it, who should have access to what, and it's kind of set for that one particular container. That kind of works. What we've done is, since there isn't that global navigation. Unfortunately, we've had folks that are sort of like recreating, kind of creating that global navigation by hand, right? Sort of maintaining those common sites or common links across these different, modern sites. That's been what they're doing today. I mean, I know I don't want to steal thunder, but I'm sure we're going to talk about later on what Microsoft is doing to address that. But I think I answered a question somewhere in between my babbling.
Yeah, no, but that's great insight. Everybody has a different take on this. Matt, is there anything else you want to add? I see that there are some questions. So for people that are looking in the window, is each site collection its own database? And Matt had answered that. Go ahead, Matt. You want to answer that?
Well, so I'm not the most technical guy in the world, but I'm pretty sure it's not, because there are as many databases as Microsoft wants in their data centers, since you don't have any control over those things when you're talking cloud, because it's a service platform. I think I'm right on that one, but anybody else that knows better, please chime in. I was just trying to answer a question as it came up.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't. It's not. We don't really know. We don't really care, actually.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. It's an irrelevant question.
Yeah, but it's not. I'm pretty sure it's not. And I did. It's site collection, different database. That's overkill.
So, Tom, I'm going to jump in a little bit with what my perspective is here on the hierarchy aspect. And I will say, having been the SharePoint sort of adoption lead for a very large organization, or large-ish organization, 10,000 users, 10, 15,000 users, some of them are there sometimes not. We went through a bunch of reorgs, and having one site collection or a couple site collections with a very strict hierarchical setup became a nightmare when there was reorgs, both on the permission side of things, but also when you wanted to have one site moved over someplace else because it's now underneath a different organization. So like if you're, working in, we had, I think, 7 levels of, I'll call it bureaucracy, but management chain in that organization. So when we moved things around, it was a nightmare, because if you move a parent site that is also a child site of something else, you have to leave an empty space for that so that it still exists in the hierarchy, because that child site can't live without it. But generally speaking, I think personally, the site collection aspect, and I think I'm the only non-MVP of the 4 of us speaking, so I'm the only one that doesn't have any future knowledge of potential things, so I can kind of speak without worrying about what I say in a way. I think the site collection setup now came out of necessity, because Office 365 groups first started with OneDrive as its file sharing repository, then moved into going to SharePoint. Now, OneDrive is SharePoint, just with a different, brand slapped onto it. But they needed to have something, and it makes sense to give you your own container, right? And do with it what you want. You can build it or break it, but you're not going to affect anybody else, which is a great thing, because like Jared kind of got at with the permission setup, when permissions are inherited down through a site collection, through the hierarchy, that can be troublesome if you're in the middle as a site owner. Also, SharePoint group names can't be used if they're already taken within one site collection, but you can have the same name in a different site collection, which can cause confusion. So it actually separating that out can help out too. The downside here is you do miss out on that whole global nav setup, but in my humble opinion, there was never a really good global navigation system to begin with. The SharePoint homepage, when you click SharePoint from the app launcher, that was sort of a weak solution to that. So if you follow your favorite sites, you'll see those pop up there. It'll graph and delve pushes up what it thinks you might want to look at, and it also tosses you what you're at frequently. But hopefully hub sites, which are on their way out now, will hopefully fix some of that. But that was also out of necessity as well, because Microsoft made the decision that we're going with the site collection route, the flat layout, and we can't not give them a way to give real navigation across site collections, because that's just not providing features that they've had before that are just really critical to getting around. There's some pretty good articles out there by people, various folks in the field that kind of argue in either direction. I'll put one that's in the direction of why flat is good. Actually, it was referred to me a couple days ago because I had a similar question from another client that was interested. But I'll send that in the chat because it's a pretty good read, and Joanne does a good job of explaining both the pros and cons of both sides, but sort of leaning in favor of flat.
Yeah, that's excellent. Thanks for the information. And I have to agree with you on that. So Joanne, it does have a really great article, and I kind of borrowed a couple ideas from that with these slides coming up. So just go to touch back on what Matt was talking about, right? With the flat architecture. When you go into SharePoint now, and you go into Office 365, you're kind of going here if you're clicking on the app launcher, and this is going to take you to your site roll-up. So they live side by side, and these are all my frequent sites. So you kind of subscribe to these sites, and they bubble up. If you went into a demo team site, I don't know if this is going to be the one I want. Yeah, there's really no global navigation, and we'll come up to that in the next couple slides of talking about the hub sites and what that brings to the table. So to go back, I mean, here's a comparison of what we just talked about, and the number one case for site collection that I kind of heard was that it's the boundary for permissions and storage and search, and the other issue that's bad against site collections is that it's potentially difficult to manage with the multiple sites and features and navigations and permissions, and you can't move it as easy if you were like in a flat architecture. Right, so let me find my slide, go back to next thing. Any question? Oh, here's that. Thanks. Yeah, so Matt posted the article in the window. What's the granularity of permissions? Only document library or list level? I think the granularity is still on and everything, right? You could be a site collection.
There's no change.
No change yet.
Basically.
Okay, here's another question. It also worries me a little bit that we can't organize projects related to a site collection in subsites. We are used to create separate search vertical to search across that structure. Okay, so if you're having like a major department or a major project, and that had sub projects underneath that. In the flat architecture with hub sites, I think you can nominate one top level to be a hub site and roll up any subsite into that. I think you're allowed to have multiple hub sites. So that may.
I think so too.
Yeah, you can.
That being said, though, don't think of this as a one or the other. This is not a binary choice. You can have some site collections that are that have no subsites, and other subsites or other site collections that do have subsites. Whether or not you want to have it being classic or modern is up to you, but actually the modern versus classic is not the same thing as flat versus hierarchical. It's just that all modern sites that are, I think, communication sites, or maybe not actually. Maybe it is one for one.
They're all site collections, and then the subsites underneath them are actually classic sites. So we'll go into that.
Right.
Yeah, but you can revert a modern to a classic site if you want to also. So if you need to use that project template and keep things rolling up through a site collection, you can. Now, Microsoft says they're supporting Classic indefinitely. I would never trust that word personally, but that's just me.
Yeah, that's a great point. That the future of, and that's one of the questions I hear from general clients and people, like, how long is Classic going to be supported for? Like, what if we don't want modern? What if we want to go Classic? Classic, they say, will be supported for a long time. I hear a long time. I hear it's another word that they said that's like could end at some point. But they're coming out with a new on-prem version, 2019, so at least 5+ years. It's gotta be at least somewhere out in that range. So by that time, you'd have something new anyway.
Yeah, but I would be personally hard-pressed to see them discontinue supporting Classic, because most folks that have built custom intranets today, have done so using Classic sites, right? Not sort of the modern sites. I would be very surprised. I mean, that's, you're talking about impacting hundreds of thousands of organizations. So they haven't done it before.
SharePoint Designer, InfoPath, anybody?
Yeah, but even think about that, right? InfoPath is deprecated for, now it's how many years ago, and it's still 2020 something. So have like that.
I agree with that. I would call that a long time away from, like, if for a while or for a long time. Like, I would think that 2026, if they said, hey, when SharePoint Designer is no longer supported, we're not going to support Classic. I'm okay with that. At that point, if people still have a custom intranet on a Classic site, they probably should start thinking about changing that anyway.
Right.
So there was a question from Ian. I'd like to see a big improvement to the content type hub support this flat architecture. Currently working with it is a pain. Columns must be wrapped in dummy content to make them available across site collection. Now, I'm not a content type hub expert. I don't know if any of you guys have some input on that.
Yeah, that is a discussion I always have, and that's when I started my statement that what I love about the flat architecture with modern site and what I hate about this is the topic that is the most painful for most of my clients, where you are managing your taxonomy or repeating the management of taxonomy throughout each site collection that you create. So every time you create a modern site, because it's a site collection, so whatever you created from a content type, you have to repeat them all through the content type hub, which now is still not supported with modern site. My understanding that Microsoft is working on improving the content type hub. Not sure what is the timeline for that. I would love to see it. I would love to see that the content type hub is getting improved. Even put aside the modern site, if you're still using content type hub with Classic, it is painful sometimes to get an update from a content type hub into the site collections. It will take forever. So definitely Microsoft acknowledged that issue, and my understanding is they are putting some efforts. Don't know when, but they're putting some efforts into improving the content type hub, and I'm hoping that will be reflected throughout the modern sites.
Thanks, Mike. So again, this slide, we're going to leave this. We talked about a lot of these points, so I'm not going to reiterate. You can have this slide to take a look at. Lengthy URLs, one thing we never said. Storage on subsites, you're limited to that of the site collection. So if the little subsite gets way too big, then you're stuck. You have to move it, migrate out. There's a lot of different pros and cons to subsites and non-subsites. So for a lot of you that have a giant architecture, who knows this guy? Randy Jackson. Going to be a no for me, dog. So that might be, you might be saying, look, I don't know about this site, this flat architecture, but I think over time, with some of you'll just get used to it. It'll be easy. I took this little snippet from the Nielsen Intranet report. Basically, what they were saying is flat versus deep hierarchy. They were kind of talking about that. They're saying content's a little bit more discoverable, also when it's not buried under multiple layers. Now they had some pros for categorizing, and I mean categorizing, creating hierarchies, but in general they were saying that they were more in favor of flat as well. And I should include the link to Joanne. Matt has included that in the comments, but that is a great read. I would definitely read that. Okay, So we showed this a little bit. What do we see when we go to our SharePoint site? The kind of, if you don't really know where you are, it seems a little bit. Pull that back up. Lost it. I lost my. Okay, yeah. So when you go into SharePoint now and you log into the portal, if you don't hit your root site directly, you don't necessarily know, like, hey, where am I? I'm in some sort of like, looks like everything else, looks like Dell, or looks like some kind of card searching thing. But this is actually the new landing page. I guess one thing we didn't really talk about is that the root site cannot be a communication site or cannot be a modern site. So the root site, when you get Office 365, is always going to be a classic site. Yes, Matt talked a little bit about this, like this mixed mode and hybrid scenario, which we're going to get into in a little bit later. So you can almost have a little bit of both. Okay, so in this section we have hub sites. So the answer to the global navigation, right? This is my promo slide I created out of their article, right? So they have this concept of the hub site, which is going to give you this top navigation that goes across the top here. Not an entirely super magnificent solution, in my opinion, either, but does it serve the purpose? Maybe. We'll see. Does it really fit the needs of everybody? I don't know. It's coming out like right now, right? Does anybody know? It's like Q1, so it's getting to first release, I believe, right now. So we'll see how well it does in the next few weeks. Right, yeah, there's Joanne's article. Anybody on the panel have anybody seeing the hub sites yet? Is that, I don't think I'm on first release in my tenant.
I have not seen it yet, so I don't. We should hear an announcement from the product group soon when they're going to start rolling out. But yes, you're right. Q1 is the time for it. But I want to just add to the hub site. It's not only navigation; it's basically news roll up as well. So if you subscribe, if you've got a modern site, a team site, or a communication site, and you have news articles on your site, that's one of the things that gets rolled up into the hub site. So you can broadcast your news into the hub site if you subscribe to it, and permissions are respected. So if you have different permissions from different modern sites, the information that you see in the hub site, it will only be relative to what permissions or what access you have.
And that's a nice feature. A lot of the clients that I've worked with, we develop roll-ups, whether we use content query or search web parts. A lot of this rolling up to the main top level site, whether it's news, information, article. That's a common theme throughout almost every intranet. So this is a nice feature that it automatically comes with it, but we'll see how far it goes. To be determined. Right.
Hey Tom, so that global nav on the new hub sites, I haven't toyed around at all with these. So when I leave the hub site and I go to one of the team sites, for example, does that global nav follow me into the team site, or is it only at the hub site because the hub site's where the navigation lives?
I believe if you look closely, again, I don't have it, so I can't say, but I think that it travels with you throughout the entire hub, the spokes of the hub or the.
Okay. So each team or communication site can only be tied to one hub site. Is that correct?
That's correct.
See, I thought this was a spider web of connections that they were offering us. That's not as elegant as I was hoping.
Yeah, I briefly glanced through this video. This is back in October. It's Mark Cashman. He talked about this when they were demoing it, and there was a big Q&A in this video, and one of the questions were, can I attach to multiple? And at that time they said no, it only goes to one. So if that's something that people are looking for, obviously you can go to user voice and somebody can submit that, and I'm sure that they'll take a look at it. If it gets enough traction, anything's possible in the world. Yeah. Are there two top navigations on a hub site? It looks like there's two navigations, right? And this is a common like complaint almost, is that you have a top navigation. This is the hub navigation right at the top in that gray bar, and then under that you have your site navigation, which is within this hub site. So, and then every site underneath that can have its own navigation. So it's almost like a navigation within inside of a navigation. A lot of people don't really like that.
Yeah, but it's no different than what it was before. It used to be the top link bar, the global nav, versus the quick launch. The quick launch just moved from the left side to the top.
Right.
At least for the home page.
Okay, so it'd be great if the top. Well, let's see. Yeah, let's see the top navigation work. So there'll be levels. There's going to be flyouts in the top navigation, but I don't know, what it's actually going to look like. So we'll move on. Another feature. I don't know. I didn't know where to put this. I didn't know exactly where to poke this in this document, but I want to talk about it. Site designs, right? So the templating in Classic and templating in Modern. When a lot of this is a common thing, right? So on Office 365, there's never been a really great templating solution. Jared, I don't know if when you create a template for just the waffle, when you create a template, right? What do you do in Office 365? How do you create a template? Like for reusability, especially if it's publishing, because you can't save the site as a template.
There is that technically that hack that you do when you just in the the site property bag, you just make it so you can actually save those sites. Yeah, I've been doing that one for a bit. I think the other answer that you do.
So a lot of people don't know that. So Microsoft blocks you from saving the site as a site template. So just to go back 1-2 steps, if you create a site in SharePoint and it's a team site, you have the option to save it as a template, and that you can reuse it. And you can go create a new site, pick that template, and it comes with the same list and libraries. So what Jared's talking about is that in Office 365, that stuff's still there. It's just hidden. So there's actually a couple blog articles that allow you to go and turn that switch on, and then you can save a publishing site as a template. But it doesn't go very far. Like it does work, but it can cause I've seen problems with it. Like publishing site has so much more than a team site does. There's a lot more features and there's a lot more requirements, so it can get you into trouble. Well, in the long run, I think. But does anybody on the panel have? Or Jared, do you want to add more to that?
Yeah, I was going to say too. Is up until the direction that Microsoft has been sort of preaching is treat this almost like it's development and leverage the Office patterns and practices to start templatizing up the creation of list libraries and sort of doing all those things where you create your new site from code with PowerShell, which is again it's interesting because it's a far departure from what is available before, right? I mean there's a completely different skill set required. It's you still get to the same end goal, and but it's a different way of sort of going about it. But we've done some templating with patterns and practices, and it's just slightly different type, but it does accomplish the goal. Most of the things you would do are available through the PNP.
So Matt or Mike, do you have any experience around templating with the old Classic sites, or actually just in Office 365 in general, and any experience with modern sites?
For the Classic, I always recommended not to use the Save As template because it's not supported. It was not recommended by the product group from a provisioning perspective, even though it looks like it's working, but it does not provision everything properly in the backend database. So from an experience in Classic, yes, we did a lot of custom provisioning engines to provision the Classic, and right now there are the product group just announced not long ago that we can start basically creating our own custom themes and compose looks in the modern. So that's only through PowerShell. So we can go ahead and create our own templates. We can grow and create basically the site, then provision the list and document libraries and use Flow to basically provision any custom list if you want to have in the modern site. So it's happening, and we're getting the tools to make it happen.
Matt, do you have anything you want to add there?
I do not. Not my expertise, and I can't say anything better than what these guys did.
All right, well, that's fine. That's perfectly well. So yeah, just the final note on this. So this is relatively new too, and yes, you do need PowerShell, and you can create JSON schemas to basically add lists and libraries, but it only works for modern. So what you're seeing here in this screenshot is on the left, this is where you choose your site template, topic, or showcase they have. And then in the middle, this is the schema that has been uploaded to your site via PowerShell. And on the right, it's showing you the activities of the provisioning. So with modern, they're actually giving us a hook provisioning cycle of SharePoint. So we can create lists and libraries. And they're ultimately what they're also giving us a hook into Flow, and that hook will allow you to call an Azure function and basically do anything the PNP library already does. So yeah, so this was announced at Ignite, and it's there. It does work right now. It's limited to what it can do, but this is something. I have a link at the top if you want to get started with that right now. You're looking to provision modern team sites and modern templates. If you want to create a department site and you want to have lists and libraries, then yeah, go check this link out. It'll tell you how to get started. Are you publishing the slides? Okay, absolutely, yes. Yes, we're gonna post the video and we're gonna publish the slides right after the call. There was a question a little bit ago. Can you do a backup and restore in SharePoint Online? I don't know that you can. I don't know if you guys have anything on that. No, I'm guessing that no. PNP, yeah, you can do provisioning with PNP, and you can back up a site and move it. Again, we're trying to do as little coding type stuff as possible when we're creating a template. We used to have a nice little button. That's kind of what we're used to, and now you have to build up so much more nowadays. It's really a whole effort. All right, so let's move on to the next topic here. Excuse me. So branding, this is one of my favorite things. Here's what we're going to talk about. Master page, where did they go? Adding JavaScript, CSS, talk about some page layouts, compose looks, and site logo. And is custom branding necessary now that there's an actual better interface? So we'll leave this comparison screen up here while we talk about a couple things. So in the old world, in the classic world, you have unlimited flexibility. Actually, I'm going to have to jump to the next slide. You have unlimited flexibility. So where's that master page? It's built on ASP.NET server-side technology. You had a master page. They moved it to the cloud. You still had a master page. It still ran. It still runs on their server. You can change it, but they switched now. They switched to a JavaScript framework, it's very React. They have some knockout in there. The front end is under their control now, so you sort of have to play by their rules a little bit. Yes, what are your options? You can do simple colors. You can do simple themes, which are the simple colors and fonts. You can add headers and footers. In the classic realm, you have ultimate control. So you can do whatever you want. And the problem with that is you also are responsible for any future upgrades. So if a feature comes out and they add a control to the ribbon and you want to take advantage of that, it's your responsibility to integrate that into your version of the master page. Because essentially you've taken a fork off of their path. So you're now in control, and you now have to take ownership of that. In the classic world, the mobile experience, not so great. And we're going to go through a bunch of slides on that. The support, they have support in terms of web parts. They have the support for the add-in and the App Store. modern. There's no add-in thing that I'm aware of right now. And if you want to use web parts, you have to use the SPFX web parts and the SPFX design patterns. But the cool thing about modern is that it's 100% mobile. Everything is mobile friendly. So don't need to go ahead and do what you used to do. So I mentioned classic master page, right? If you go to top SharePoint and you look at any site on there, those are all classic UI. They pretty much rip the face off of it, pop the new face on. Any third-party UI replacements that you might have heard of, I'm not going to mention any names, but there's those ones pretty much provide their own master page and then take over your SharePoint site in that way. So they link all their scripts and they do that. So here we go. So master page you seek, you will not find it. No longer a thing, says one of my fellow SharePointer friends. New interface is all JavaScript framework. So you got to get good at React. You got to get good at Angular potentially. How do we brand? These are the components that you're left with. So you're left with the application customizer. You know, provides you access to certain points in the site. So you have access to a header and a footer. Right here, like header, footer, and that's it. And you can get started with that. It's called an application customizer. So I want to stop here. I want to ask our panel: is anybody doing any custom branding with modern right now?
We are. I am. I pretty much engaged right now with a client that they want to have their own identity when it comes to having the intranet. They are big on the marketing. They are to the point that they don't want to see, for example, the Office 365 app launcher. They just want to have it as their own logo, their own colors, and make sure that everything adhere to what their marketing message is. So yes, we are engaged in doing that for them. So we just customizing the branding for the modern site. So we're going with communication site for kind of the entrance into the other modern team sites. So we've customized that. We're deploying the actual themes through PowerShell and JSON into the tenant. And it's not bad actually. It's different. We still have if you compare what you've done in Classic with publishing sites where we can do a lot of master pages or your own custom ones, whether you are a big fan of it or not, there are some limitations in the modern where, for good reason, because the product group they don't want you to do something that can break your site collection. So yes, we have the options right now. We have the capabilities to do custom branding and deploy them into existing modern sites.
Very good. Jared or Matt, you have any experience with clients demanding anything special or have any complaints about right now what's going on with modern?
So it's actually funny. I'm on the cusp of about to start a new intranet for a client, and I'll be honest, I'm still kind of going back and forth whether or not recommending them to go modern for the intranet homepage versus Classic, just based on some of the differences in the way that they operate, some of the the lack of search-based web parts, and really that pushing more of that to code. So yeah, I was curious to see what my fellow panelists would say on this particular question, just because it's kind of top of mind right now. But so at this point, we have not done any modern branding for any of our clients in Hartford.
So my experience on this is we did do a little bit of customizing. We added a global nav bar with CSS in my last company. And one thing that I have been disappointed to find out is that the boundaries that Microsoft gives you and tells you to work within, we did that 100%. And one day we came in and our global nav bar was totally broken. because what happened was they moved the goalposts on us over a weekend or on a Friday or something. We came in on a Monday and it was broken. That has burned me a little bit. In addition to that, I'm probably the extreme one of the four of us, where I very much am always in favor of an out-of-the-box solution. I think branding is and always has been a waste of time and waste of money. I'm saying that with a smirk on my face. But, and don't get me wrong, I realize that there are so many of us out there that have made so much money off of branding. But that being said, I've heard every argument in favor of branding. And I used to be a brand manager for a company. I know exactly what those branding and marketing people are trying to make you do. If they're asking you to, like Mike, I I rolled my eyes when I heard they wanted to get rid of the app launcher and that stuff. Like, no, like you wouldn't take out the file menu in Outlook, right? Like, I don't see the value in that. And then you'll get the point of the comment of, well, nobody's going to use it if it doesn't look nice. And that's absolutely untrue, because if that were the case, nobody would use Amazon, nobody would use Craigslist, and nobody would use Reddit. It always comes down to good content. So if you have a really well-organized and useful intranet, people will use it no matter how it looks. I idolize another guy out there in our field, the SharePoint Maven, who many of you have probably heard of because he has probably the best blog out there for just every day applying SharePoint to real-world scenarios. And he has a really good article out there called "It's Okay for SharePoint to Look Like SharePoint." But I just can't justify the it needs to look good before we use it justification, because you're going to add months to your schedule. You're going to add thousands of dollars to your budget. And the value you're going to get, the ROI, is not quantifiable. You cannot convince me. I'm a data guy. It is not quantifiable. It should be, make sure people like it first, like push it, change management, market it, talk about the success stories, get really good use cases, optimize search, all that kind of stuff. And if people prove that they like it, okay, then we'll brand it for you because you like it so much. It's kind of like one of those, like, yep, we'll babysit the neighbor's dog for a weekend before we actually buy into you getting a dog for your child. Like, that's the way that I would see it. So I'll send you the link. I'll send you the link for Greg's article because I think it's a good one. But I think, in my opinion, we're moving in the direction of, oh, finally, like this whole branding era is going to go by the wayside, which, don't get me wrong, got lots of us rich, I know. But I just never liked it.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. Like, those are the exceptions I've encountered. I've implemented so many migrations into Office 365, and I'm always against any customization. That includes branding. If you do some theming, some colors, and to make it kind of match your corporate branding, that's perfectly fine. That's what I preach about. Exactly what you said. It's all about the data. Make it user-friendly, make it usable, and just don't concentrate on the look and feel.
Yeah.
But with what we have with modern site, it looks really nice. You really don't have to do a lot of branding. You just apply some colors and something.
That's exactly right. I think the layout, the look and feel, and the usability is so much better now that there's very little argument to be made anymore. Not that I really think there was much in the past anyway, but there's less of an argument to be made to say, like, oh, but it's so ugly, it looks like SharePoint. It's like, yeah, exactly. Get over it. Like, But and I will say, if you're not familiar with how branding works, the out-of-the-box branding works with SharePoint now, if you look at the screenshot that Tom has in this slide, the black bar at the top is called the sweet bar. You can make that any color that you want. I think all you have to do is throw in a hex value. And you can also, at the site level, you can choose a different color scheme if you want. They've tossed in a few, pretty palettes, but you can make your own. You can add the corporate logo in the top center, and a couple of my clients, we've done that, where click that, it brings you back to the home page. So no matter where you are in the intranet, that includes if you're on OWA, if you're on Flow, if you're basically anywhere but Teams, because Teams is the outlier that doesn't want to use the sweet bar. You can get back to your home page or whatever page that happens to point to, which is pretty nice. And the login screen is also customizable. So you can have your logo, you can have a nice background image that represents your brand somehow, and then you can have some basically legalese of by clicking this link, you are, agreeing that you've read the iTunes user agreement and you've given up all rights to, the king of Office 365 kind of thing.
I think those are all great points. I'm going to do the flip side and say I like to control the brand. I like to make it look pretty. I like to make it be a custom. I like being able to put my identity on it. I can go with though, all right, if you don't want to do that, then SharePoint, if they can give us more, if they could give us a little bit more, if we want to leave it, fine. But if we want that next level, I think they should let us have it. I mean, intranets are, to me, they're kind of like, they're not applications, right? When you build an intranet, they're not really applications. They're very custom. It has to fit a little bit of the corporate identity, and I think a lot of places want more. I mean, I don't argue with you that some places just use it. You don't need anything more than colors, right? Small places, but there's going to be these large organizations that really have an identity is like everything to them. So they're not going to per se use SharePoint unless they can customize it, and I think that's what we're going to find.
Yeah, so Tom, so I'm actually kind of a little bit more on your side of the fence, and so my background is I came from a communications department, and that was kind of how I learned how to. I guess that was my first job. I learned how to work in a large organization, and a lot of times when I go into clients, the folks that own that intranet are usually the communication folks, and they kind of wear the two hats. They're both sort of the voice of the corporation, and they also tend to be our biggest champions for SharePoint. So it's one of those kind of games you have to play where, you sort of make them very happy with, make it reflect the brand, the colors, the experience, all those fun kind of cute words about makes people feel happy. And it's for the homepage. I think there's diminishing returns once you venture beyond just that initial homepage, but I'm still very much in favor of getting, the communications department or the marketing department who's responsible for us, the voice and just sort of the image of that company, to its employees and customizing to fit those needs. Just again, because they're going to help champion that platform across the corporation. So that's my 2 cents.
Right. So I want to share with everyone an article. This is kind of like my go-to sharing article. So this is the first time I really became aware of modern, like people actually using it. I was at SharePoint Saturday Boston, and I sat in a session with David Feldman, MVP. He worked on this team, and Mike Gilronian. He worked at Shire as well. And this is the biggest case when I saw Shire, which is a huge pharmaceutical company, adopt modern. I said, there's got to be something here. There's got to be, obviously, how did they do it? How did they customize it? And this is what they came up with. So just looking at their home site, this is a branded SharePoint site. So I noticed a few things because I've worked with modern branding, like in great detail. So if you look at their homepage here, right, they still keep the ribbon, and I agree. Yeah, maybe trimming the ribbon is not a great idea. If you want to do it, you accept the risk. Fine. That's not a request I haven't heard before. But they have this top navigation. So you look at their site and it's like, well, where's that middle tier navigation? So they have obviously done some kind of customization here, whether it's with CSS, I don't know, or JavaScript. They've done something to this header, and they've done something to the web parts where they probably moved the header or they styled them. But a lot of these are the SharePoint out of the box parts, and some of them are going to be custom. Just to give you a little insight on this project, they had a team of like maybe 8 MVPs that they hired. So they just had
the ultimate A team when it came to Microsoft intranet.
Yeah. So when I look at this, I say, hey, they threw everything they got at it. They had the top people in development, the top people in governance and infrastructure. I mean, they had like they didn't have me, so they didn't have the top, right? But they did have like really everybody can laugh at that. That's okay.
I was laughing like that. It's obviously Tom. Like we know why why prescription drugs cost so much, right?
Right.
You see what was probably spent on.
This is great.
So I know. I mean, they did have an all-star lineup. I can't deny that. It's the people that you see at all the conferences. They are the experts in the community. So they going and looking through, they don't really have much more. They have the standard communication sites, and they're kind of working with it. They're kind of working with what they get out of the box. So it's not the greatest. This is a great article. I'll share this as well. But I do notice that they did do some customizations. They definitely reached outside of those zones. So,
That's correct. Yeah, their video where they do the panel interview is really good too, because they all go into a little bit of detail on what their roles were. Because Sue Hanley was on that, DRC was on that, Dave was on that. So you have like the key person in various. So Dave was the developer, Sue was the IA or the knowledge person,
right.
DRC was the designer. You know, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, there's the video right there. It's a really good video though. I would definitely advise watching it.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of SPFX, but yeah, I mean, that's Scott Hillier. That's not a problem. So I wanted to share that. That's one really important thing. It's my go-to thing. I always point people to this video. So there's no really great answer right now. Branding, yes. You heard both sides. You heard yes, should be corporate identity. Here's what you get with the colors. You get the old classic style, which they don't recommend you mix and match the new and the old for just compatibility. And then you have the new style on the right hand side. And you can go ahead and build these colors, either classic or modern. There's theme builders for that, so you can go and build your own, customize the color slots they call them, and really get granular with the colors. Again, you don't know where those colors go. You don't know where they get applied to, but hey, they give you options. They give you an idea. Some people might say, well, wait a second, how do I inject JavaScript scripts? How do I get my JavaScript? That's a question that I get asked all the time too. Like in modern, I want to inject jQuery on the page, or I want to do something on the page. You're not allowed to do that. So you're not really allowed to do that. I say really because we mentioned the SPFX has those zones that they expose, and Microsoft's hope is we respect those zones. If we read the very fine print at the bottom, it says it's technically possible to reach outside of those zones to do things like ribbon trimming, CSS, and any jQuery manipulation. So it is technically possible, and I think they did a lot of that on that Shire project, but that comes with a warning that, like Matt already explained, one day, and he played nice, and one day he showed up and the zone was moved or something, was one of the classes changed and it broke functionality. So if you decide you want to go that route, then yeah, you're going to take ownership of that as well. And that may be one way that you can achieve a higher level of branding with modern, is that maybe you dabble in those areas and you customize some of the pages with CSS and JavaScript, and you accept ownership of that as well. But the chances are something is going to change, and you're going to have to rework. So not a great thing to do. And I agree with a lot of the points. It's best to use the application and focus on functionality over cool branding. I think at the end of the day, the functionality, the content has to be there. The branding, it's awesome as well, but no one's going to go there because it looks cool if there's no content. They're going to go there because it's functional and there's content, and the branding is like an upside to it. All right, so we talked about a lot of the branding. I just want to touch on the mobile experience, right? So the key.
Nice photo with the brick there too. I wonder what SharePoint site she's looking at.
It's a little tasteless picture, I know, because there's no way SharePoint runs on that phone, right? So
that's a brick.
Yeah. You need to be able to use it on the go, right? Modern has SharePoint app, which I don't have much experience with the SharePoint app, but Classic, I know it's been a battle with Classic in modern. I mean, in mobile, right? There's it has mobile because it was a checkbox on like the delivery form. Is Classic mobile? Yes, someone checked the box. There's some mobile interface. It's very, very bad, and then there's also, you can override it with the master page. So you have to have SharePoint mobile, because when you go out to dinner and you're hanging out with your friends, you need to check SharePoint, and then on vacation you need to be able to use it as well.
So I'm curious. I'm going to jump in here. Anybody want to chat? Throw in the chat box. Does anybody use the SharePoint mobile app to access actual pages versus just like, I'll go into files, but I always go through OneDrive. I've never had a use case yet to use the SharePoint mobile app.
So you're saying mobile app for
For
the
like actual page content, not classic, but for, well, has anybody ever had a need for it and like, oh damn, the classic sites are even not mobile friendly enough. I really wish that they were.
now we're seeing a lot. Dell, Peter uses Dell.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm not a user. That's the thing. So we really need to hear from the audience. If anybody can answer that, please pop some feedback in there.
Yeah, Dinesh, Ian, I'm with you guys.
I mean, I could see using it for documents, right? Going to your.
Absolutely, and I do all the time, but not for like content on a page.
Mostly used, like like you said, for documents, where I've seen it being used as a page when there is a news article, where technically it is a page. So just going through the article, the news article, that's pretty much it. But just to go and browse to the actual homepage of a modern site, yeah, I don't think I have experienced that as well.
Yeah, so the files for me come in really handy but I don't need SharePoint to get to them because if I've opened them recently, they're going to be in my OneDrive anyway. But I tell people whenever I'm trying to argue to people or point out the fact that 365 is really useful, and they're like, nah, I don't really have it. This is no change other than the fact that you're moving me, and this is such a hurdle and a pain for me in my work life. And it's like, well, the next time that you're running a meeting and you're in somebody else's office or a different building and you can't get on the Wi-Fi and open up your laptop is too cumbersome, remember that your phone is there and it's connected to a cell network, and that you can open that file right then and there and see what the agenda is going to be during that meeting.
Right.
Nothing holding you back. But I don't need SharePoint for that. I could even open up just Word or even Adobe Acrobat if I happen to be using that app. So I've never actually had a need for the SharePoint app, which, don't get me wrong, it's kind of a bare minimum. They should have offered it a while ago, and it should be there because just it should. But I actually have not had a use case, and I was just kind of curious if anybody else had.
I have one client that basically they have a lot of people on the field, and they use the mobile app just specifically to quick access content that's been pushed from the global intranet. To just go into the actual intranet page and directly into the document library and then get all the information they need from a sales perspective.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, so they are like I've had a few clients that use it. Yes, definitely, and they love it. They love it that they can access the actual documents. They wanted to, again, customize the app. I'm like, what do you want to customize the app? Just let the app do what it does. Exactly the first point of branding. Just the app is for you to get the information while you're on the road. So, yeah, I've had a couple of use cases for that.
That's a good point. I'm thinking if you use it, you're going to use it very heavily. If you don't use it, you're going to use it almost never.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
For me, the clients that I've worked with, they really focus on the homepage being mobile because of the news and announcements. I guess, and I don't know if it's a CEO, like the CEOs want it, like they want to see the news, like they just want to go to the internet on their phone and see the news and see the events and see, like, I don't know if it's just like a real desire that everybody needs it to work mobily, or is it just like, oh well, yeah, of course we want it to work mobile because we all have phones and tablets. I don't know, but getting the homepage to work where everything's rolled up there, I think that's one of the things. Yeah, KPI. So we had some comments. Avinash, she said, yeah, getting some of them, putting special web parts on the page that work in mobile where you can click and maybe get into KPIs, those kind of things. You could see really quickly the charts, having mobile charts, those are important. So I'm just going to breeze through a couple of these. So this is the app. I just throw some pictures in there so we can see. And with the mobile app, you do get your internet roll-ups. This is an O365 video portal. But here's one of the websites on this side. This doesn't really look like that. Same thing. I got this from the website, so yeah. You could see your following sites in Modern, and again, you can go and get your files, but you can see the activity of who did what. So it gives you a lot of flexibility there with the app, but you're not getting your branding with app. You're just going to potentially get those colors if they support that. I don't think it does yet. So yeah, Power BI has, Dynamics, Power BI, those things have charts. Branding key takeaways. We mentioned Classic gives you ultimate control. Choose your own destiny. You want to really maximize your brand. then you're going to have to go with classic mode, but modern's the future. So if you decide you want to go with classic mode and modern is where they're going to be putting all the new stuff, they're going to be building all the new web parts, they're going to be adding a lot more functionality there. Now, we haven't talked about you can do a little bit of both yet, but hopefully we'll get to that. I know we only have 20, a couple more minutes left, like 20 more minutes. So one thing I'd like to see, which we didn't touch, would be to have page layouts in modern. So in modern, you can create page layouts on the fly. I'd like to see the ability to have locked in page layouts. Like, okay, here's a 3-column one with web parts built into these zones. I think that would be a great feature. Big effort to mobilize the classic. Matt already mentioned, the budget. Like with one of the projects, you can't see the wasting that money on that. And to some extent, if it's not a true requirement, then I kind of would agree. But you were stuck, like last year, kind of going that route. So you're having to live there. Now you have the option. All right, content management is our next section. Provisioning, we talked about that. Modern web editing experience, superior in modern list and libraries. Whoops, quick edit, list and libraries, quick edit panel, list view threshold, and site template. So I'll open it up to our panel about content management. What do you guys think are the best features or the worst features in both areas? So let's start with, we haven't heard from Jared for a while. So Jared, content management, editing pages, what's your feeling on modern?
I mean, it's interesting because it's in some ways a lot more intuitive, I think, than classic. It resembles almost kind of a little bit of like almost like the WordPress experience. Like if folks have gotten into blogging a little bit, I think it's there's some areas where I get it gets a little bit weird. Like sometimes the placement of those little plus signs can be interesting. I know when I played around with some of the web part, the hero web part, it can get kind of fun when you're trying to think, are you editing that particular cell, or are you editing the entire like web part? That can be just a little bit squirrely. But I mean, overall, I mean, if you show, I've seen people sort of pick up this a little easier than they have with classic, because I think you also wrestle less with the whole like checking the page out, and like all these different, like the ribbon changing color. Like it's a little bit different, I've seen. It's just because it's kind of hiding some stuff. It's just a little cleaner, but as I'm like kind of watching you edit stuff on.
Yeah, just kind of demoing some of the things while you're talking.
Yeah, I mean, it's just in some ways it's very like intuitive, because you're just like, I mean, if you like go a little slower, but if you go and hit like the plus sign to go at a web part, right, rather than having to go up into the ribbon to go start like funneling through web parts and sort of that jump from the add a web part here to up, it's like this is way more intuitive. This is kind of how people are used to sort of interacting with web experiences, right? So it's kind of cool. On kind of the negative side, the thing that, I mean, again, it's like, I always love to comment out what isn't there is, well, with all the new web parts, there are things that are missing. And for me, especially thinking about intranets, the lack of the search-based web parts is still sort of that, like, puts me on the edge, right? I mean, leveraging search to roll up content and leveraging, display templates to present on the page is very, very powerful, especially, especially for intranets, right? Because maybe you're rolling up popular items, or maybe you're doing like, the last 10 published and whatnot. But the fact that there aren't the search web parts is kind of the thing that has me sort of going back to classic for some use cases. But like overall, I think the UI for managing the modern pages is much nicer than the old busted of classic.
Right. Matt or Mike, do you guys have anything to add about the new experiences with either lists and libraries, or pros and cons, best features?
Oh, from a list and libraries, I love the modern. Basically, every classic site right now, you can have the modern list and libraries even if you are on a classic site. So I encourage everyone to go in and use it and turn it on if your tenant admin has not turned it on. It's just the fact that we have predictive indexing. I don't know. I think you're going to talk about it in a bit. I think you have a slide on it, but automatically indexes up to 20,000. We've always complained about the 5,000 limit threshold on a list. So there's a lot of cool features that can come with the modern list. So basically now you switched it to like on I'm seeing what you're doing. You switch it to classic. Um, um, so it's not as user friendly as modern anymore. So for example, if you want to go and update a property of any image of any item, you just have to click and go and have now 3 clicks, and then you have to click on properties or edit it, and then you have to refresh the page. And it's that was okay a few years ago. Now it's much smoother when you go back into a modern way. So you just click on the actual picture, and then you get the information panel on the right-hand side, and you can update on the fly. And yeah, exactly what you're doing. So I love the modern. I don't see a reason, even if you are still on classic site, I see no reason why stay classic list and libraries.
I agree completely with that. I think the user interface is insanely good for libraries especially. So I'm more of a collaboration guy and a user level at that. I'm more of an adoption. That's sort of my bailiwick. So like just the fact that I can upload a folder now by drag and drop is, was nice. But all those buttons along that toolbar on the top are a significant improvement to what was a very confusing tool, or what was the ribbon prior to that. My other thing here is keep in mind that if you're using Office 365 groups, so Outlook groups, Teams, and now Yammer feeds as well, whenever you're uploading files to those, they're going to SharePoint. Now, SharePoint may be kind of playing second fiddle to things like Teams and groups and whatnot, but in reality, all of those files are going to SharePoint. And I think that this interface, plus, especially in Teams, the user interface for getting files into and like working with files in Teams is by far one of the best content management experiences that Microsoft has offered, I think. And it means people are using SharePoint intuitively. It's not, the learning curve isn't really there because they've almost sort of reached their Google Drive point, I guess, of ease of use. So I think it's been a major improvement. And frankly, even though there are some lacking features in how pages work, so there are a couple web parts that I wish existed still, like the script editor, a few other ones, perhaps the query web parts too, because even with hub sites, it doesn't sound like you can kind of pick and choose what content you want like you can with the query web parts in Classic. Even with those issues, I would still take a modern site any day over a Classic site because the content interactability or interactivity, whatever, how you interact with that library and list is significantly better than Classic can ever offer you.
Right, those are all great points. And I think, yeah, you'll see this, you see this modern experience with the lists and libraries. And what I mentioned a little bit is, you can have a little bit of both. So you can have classic and you can have modern, switching back and forth. It's not, I actually like the modern a lot. I know there's a lot of downside to it with different functionality. You can't add any scripts to the page. So for people that are manipulating things on the fly, you have to rebuild those solutions in the SPFX way that they like you to use. I wanted to mention with this is that, and same with OneDrive, and so everything that you see coming out with OneDrive, you're going to see sort of like in this area. I think that's the direction, kind of universal. So you'll see document previews. So this is an AI file. You get document previews of all types of files, regardless of AI files. Anything you upload, they have 200 plus different documents. It's got bulk tagging, so you can bulk tag different things. And it's very easy. Like I never like the old interface with the list with the document. Just too clunky, too many clicks to get through.
Yeah, and let's put it this way, from a mobile experience as well, even though some use cases that you may not use mobile, but if you have to use mobile, just browse into a document library, a classic document library on a mobile. If you don't have the app, it was painful back in the days. Just the responsiveness of the modern sites and libraries is awesome.
One other thing you can't do that you are missing from the ribbon is the Open with Explorer mode, which a lot of people grew very addicted to with the classic sites. And granted, you could only do it in Internet Explorer. It was not available in Firefox or Chrome, and inexplicably, it was not available in Edge either. And I think that was because of the call that it made. I forget what it was, but to have access to these files through Explorer, if you want to go through File Explorer or even Finder on your Mac, you're going to have to start taking note of OneDrive, the next-gen sync client, which is going to mean you're going to sync that stuff. Some people don't want to do that, but you're kind of have to get over that when it comes to that kind of stuff. So you're in. You want to go to the library.
Yeah, I was looking for it. There.
So Open with Explorer, but you're probably using Chrome right now.
Chrome.
Yep, yeah, you can't do it with Chrome.
Right. You can only use it in IE. And it's handy. I mean, you can't blame them, because if you wanted to transfer files between two libraries, the best way to do it was to bring up two browser windows, open them both up with Explorer, drag and drop. Now, you can do that with the move or copy button in the modern experience, and it's actually very slick. And it also takes version history with it, which this situation, if you ever did a drag and drop and you were just doing a move, not a copy, you would lose the version history. So if you realize that you moved something and you didn't want to, or, oh no, we lost the version history, if I move it back and get it back, you wouldn't get it back. So it was ActiveX. That's correct. Thank you, Ian.
Yeah, you need ActiveX. And only IE has ActiveX.
Correct.
And nobody else ever will have it, because it's
right.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a great point about version history. If you move the files, you now get the version history through the modern experience. So what about workflows, guys? What are our options with workflows? I know there's a couple questions about taxonomy and managed metadata on documents in modern. Like what are our options there?
Which one you want to talk first? Workflows?
Let's talk workflows first, because that one I had backed up. Somebody asked me about workflows. So what can we do in modern versus classic in terms of workflows on documents?
So the use of Microsoft Flow, it's big. I've been using it for quite a bit right now. So Flow is one answer that you can use as a replacement to the traditional SharePoint Designer workflow that we've used before. So definitely Flow is the way to go, and you can do approval process. You can do multiple automations, anything that you've done before, with a lot more in terms of connectors to different non-Office 365 or Office or SharePoint Online platform. So Flow is the answer for any automation and any workflow approval process.
Now, will the modern support any SharePoint Designer workflows? Like, say you had it on your list and you push it to modern view, do those go away? Do they still work?
Actually, I just did one right now with SharePoint Designer, because I had the client that they want to create a flow or an automation workflow. They are on Office 365, but they have not actually provisioned mailboxes for any of the user. So they don't want to do it through the gateway, and so just basically a simple workflow. I just created a SharePoint Designer workflow on a modern site. It works fine. Nothing changed from a backend infrastructure, list, document management, document libraries perspective. Nothing changed from a SharePoint Designer.
Okay. And what about taxonomy and managed metadata? So do we still have access to tag our documents from managed metadata?
Yeah, absolutely. You still have the same way to you've done it before. It's actually nicer. Like basically, you're looking at it right now.
Field here, I could tag it.
Absolutely, you can tag the same. It's a lot quicker to tag, so you're not refreshing every time. So you click on a document or an image, you just you can even actually have multiple content types. The same way you've done it before. If you have a document library or a list with multiple content types, so you can have you'll see the content type drop down information in the information panel, and then you select it, and then different metadata, and it will show up with the term store. If you have any metadata with term store, it will definitely show up there as well. So and it's a lot quicker. No refreshers. You just click, fill it out, and there you go. It saves it automatically for you.
And metadata is not a chore like it used to be. It was a chore. If you wanted to get somebody to actually follow along with metadata, you had to make it a required field because so many people would just ignore it or not know what they were doing. The other nice thing is if you do have required metadata, in the past when you would upload a file, it would be checked out automatically. It no longer is. It actually tells you, because before it was almost invisible that the file was checked out to you and nobody could see it until you had. I think now it actually says you have these required pieces of metadata. You better fill it out.
Yeah, exactly. It gives you like a view, a temporary view that there is something, an action is needed, and it goes into highlights what's the missing metadata that you have.
And that was a long time coming. I don't know how many checked out files I had we had in my system when we had to do an upgrade from 2007 to 2013. And it was like you can't migrate a checked out file. You either have to get them to check it in for you, or I think there's some PowerShell workarounds to do it too. But it was that was kind of a nightmare. So the fact that that's no longer going to be an issue or not no longer, but it's going to be significantly less of an issue than it was in the past is a big win.
Right. So I'll leave this slide here. We're approaching 8 o'clock mark. We'll probably end up going a couple minutes over. I want to try to get to the rest of the points here. We're almost at the end. So I'll leave this slide about the comparison, about the pros and cons. There's some differences, and as you dig, you'll see that there's more differences. And again, what if I told you you can have modern, classic, you could switch back and forth? I think what we'll see in this upcoming year is a lot of people doing hybrid scenarios where they have SPFX web parts and in the classic site, and they have a modern page in their classic site, and then not necessarily going full modern. I think you'll see, because if you already have classic, you're stuck there. You can do a few things, which we'll hit on at the very, very end. Yeah, Mike mentioned predictive indexing. So everybody, you probably aren't really aware of this about the 5,000 item limit. What have they done to increase that in Office 365? They've introduced predictive indexing, so it allows you to create indices or basically views on a library for up to 20,000, and I think it's even surpassed that amount right now. So again, Joanne Klein, great article on list views, and Mark on predictive indexing. They both reference, I think, each other, or she references him. And this is a slide from Ignite. So for large lists over 5,000. Yeah, so we have to talk about hybrid. It's not on-prem. Yeah, not that kind of hybrid. It's a different hybrid.
It's a Frankenstein's monster, is what it is.
Yes, a little bit of everything, and I could show that in a second. Filter panes, nice. I like this. I love the filter panes, and this is what they mean by indices, right? So as long as your items are somehow they filter down, whether you could create a view of 20,000 or so items, you don't get a broken list if you go to your list. Lists can support, like, I don't know what the number is. There's like a million. It's like millions or something, right? I don't know if you guys know the actual number. Lists can support a lot of items. Sky's the limit. But the view itself, if you ever try to query the list, and if your result set is higher than 5,000, you would always get hit with this, hey, we can't help you kind of thing. So the predictive indexing is supposed to help that. If it's a field that you're sorting on, it indexes it, and it lets you access higher amounts of information. All right, so let's talk about development, and I think that's it. I only have like 10 slides, so we'll just talk about development, and I think we end with a little bit about migration, and that's it. So I apologize, we are running over, but I feel this is a really good discussion. If you do have to drop off, don't feel bad. The recording will be online. It'll just give me a day to put it up. So we're gonna keep chugging ahead. So development, right? Classic, we had the sandbox, we had add-in model, we had app model, SP hosted, cloud hosted, and we have no SPFX unless we're on a modern page, and again, hybrid scenario, right? So for those people doing add-ins and apps, usually third party, like Hyperfish or whoever, they have to live. They like that model because it gives them isolation from other elements on the page because it's an iframe. In the modern world, we have to deal with SPFX. So everything we do is going to be something SPFX. That's the future here. So these are the different technologies that are involved here: React, TypeScript, Yeoman, Gulp, Webpack. I talked to a JavaScript developer for once, and I didn't get laughed at. So it's kind of funny how JavaScript was kind of this ridiculous language that everybody joked on a couple years ago, right? And it's come full circle, right? So now we're no longer doing server-side stuff. We're actually doing all this client-side, and the JavaScript frameworks have really come a long way. And 30 million, thank you for that. So the JavaScript frameworks are now the way that the web is kind of built, and very asynchronous patterns and consuming endpoints and updating your interface. And it's now working with TypeScript, so you have typing on your data. All right, thanks for joining. I know a couple people leave, but so just to touch on some of this development stuff. I know we don't have the panel is not all developers here. A lot of these guys, they don't do that real development stuff. But here's a little comparison chart of from where we were with .NET. Now we're Node, NuGet, we still as NPM, MS Build is the Gulp task, C# is TypeScript typing, and then Visual Studio templates. When you say, oh, I want to build a new branding package, or I want to build a new web part, Yeoman is now the framework and the scaffolding for that. Tom said SPFX they do work on classic page. Well, we'll look at that because I didn't think you can add them to a classic page. I just tried. I didn't see them available. So yeah, that's interesting. I would definitely take a look at that.
Your own. If you develop a web part, SPFX based web part, you can use it in a classic.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be a modern page.
No, it could be classic page.
Oh, really? Okay. I thought you had to put it on a modern page inside a classic site.
No, you can go the traditional way from a classic page, and you can upload once it's in the app.
In the app catalog.
In the app catalog, yes, you can use it.
Oh, great. So that's good. I'm gonna have to try that. So in terms of development, all the solutions that have been built now, if you're trying to migrate or move things into the classic world, yes, sometimes you have to rebuild some of them to get them into app catalog mode. So they have to get into that app catalog with the SPFX framework in order for them to be added to your page. So what are you guys doing in terms of customizations? Are you working with developers to come up with any new solutions? Like how are you handling? Are you doing a lot of work with modern development right now? Go around. Matt, you want to start first? You have developers.
Out of the box all the way, baby. Pass.
Jared, what's your?
Actually, it's kind of funny. The real reason why I do if you can do the SPFX web parts on classic pages is because that's what we've got a few requests for that. So if it's more than just a couple, it's more than just like a quick little bit of jQuery and then presenting something in a meaningful way. We tend to push towards just doing SPFX, and that's how we'll bundle up the web part for deployment. Everything right now is SharePoint Online, so a lot of those kind of multi-page web parts we're doing SPFX. Whether it gets deployed on a modern or a classic page, it doesn't matter.
Great. And Mike, what's your experience right now at the development?
With modern still in the early stages, from a client perspective, not much custom SPFX development yet from my experience with the clients.
Yeah, and I'm sort of like in between. I've worked on a really large SPFX web part, and I could have swore when we tried to deploy it to a classic site, it didn't work. But that might have been for another reason. Probably some of the requirements that wasn't attached. I don't know, maybe it was Office UI, something like that. I don't really know. I'll have to go back on that project, see what was the case there. But yeah, I mean, I've started to dabble in a lot of the SPFX frameworks. I've been taking a good, well, kind of ramping up. I've seen a lot of the videos. Obviously, I recommend Pluralsight and Andrew Connell's Voitanos. He's got great. We have some questions on that. With SPFX for both client and server-side code, do we need to move away from apps? I watched a good video from Jeremy Thake on the Voitanos website, and his company, that's why I mentioned Hyperfist, they like the app model. They like the add-in app model because of the isolation and security. That they know that they're in an iframe, nobody can kind of interact with their web part. And he says that he's saying like Microsoft's going to support that for a long time because a lot of people are already using it. So I don't know if anyone has feelings on that. I don't think that the add-in model is going to go away because of the, like, anytime in the near future. Same with Classic. I think it's an investment that they made, and they're going to keep it for a long time.
I think so too. I don't have a lot of insights, but that's my opinion as well. That the ad will be kept for a while.
All right. So last note about migrations. Just to touch on, say somebody has Classic and they want to start going to Modern. I mean, what's the path? What's the best action? What do you recommend? And we'll talk about scenarios where I have a ton of stuff already on Classic, or I'm starting out fresh. Right? We'll go around the room. My feeling was one does not simply migrate, but who knows I want to hear what you guys have to say. So we'll come back to that in a second. So let's start with Jared this time. Jared, what would you say to somebody that has a boatload of stuff on Classic and they want to start looking at Modern? Like what kind of advice would you give that kind of person or that client?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably do a focused pilot, pilot migration, not migration, but just a focused effort. Get people comfortable. I mean, it's kind of interesting, right? There's a lot of UI improvements, but then also if they've been working in Classic for a long time, that could present its own challenges. They're so used to, they got the muscle memory of how to operate that they could get, confused, overwhelmed, and all that. I'm not a big of you get a modern. Not everybody, right? Just pick the use case that makes sense. Don't make their jobs more complicated just because this new shiny object is out there. It's more of what are use cases that doesn't match, or do you have a couple of new requirements, new projects? Make those modern first, and of course sort of see how that goes. I can't see going to a client and say, yeah, let's just flip everything over to modern. Like that's a great idea. People are gonna love it. I mean, there's people that will love it, but then there's it could be a bigger project than you think it is.
Yeah, that's a great point. Case by case basis. Don't just dump the whole. Don't try to dump the whole thing, or don't bite off more than chew. Matt, what's your take on that?
So you kind of have to split up what the term migration means. If you're talking, you're an SPO already. If you're in the cloud and you're used to using Classic sites, sort of the transition to Modern is one sort of migration case. The other migration case is we're moving from an on-prem system that's becoming out of date. If we're on 2013, 2010, 2007, and we want to migrate to the cloud, I would say that's a really, really big change in UI. So if you're going to be dealing with that much change, you might as well add in that small little tidbit of go Modern, because you're going to get the best of all worlds, and you're probably going to be rebuilding most of the major pages in your intranet anyway, and try to include that in your process. I will say one of the last migrations I worked on, we didn't realize until later on that the migration tool we were using ended up bringing over the views in 2007 actually come over with the 2007 look and feel, which was disheartening because we had to do the whole thing over. or at least edit all of the views so that they would remove the 2007 sort of look and feel, which was sort of awful. But if you are looking at a 2007 or 2010 migration, keep that in mind. For the first example, that transition, if you were currently on Classic and you are considering going to Modern, you can flip the switch for Modern and keep it Classic in the sites. Now, it would be you flip the switch, everything changes, and you have to basically switch back, and it reverts back to what it is. And that's a good way to kind of follow what Jared was saying, is do some trial cases. And I think it's by site collection anyway, so you can have one site collection be on, one be off, and do it in a progressive style. But I would say it's a good opportunity, especially if you're doing an actual migration from on-prem. It's kind of like when you move, out of your house to a new house. Take stock of what you have, get rid of what you don't need, and start from scratch. So if you have old beat-up furniture, maybe it's time to consider some new furniture, and get that interior designer / knowledge manager or IA expert into your situation to try to make best of a brand new slate, because it's a really great opportunity to do that. And if you do it now with Modern, you're going to get more features with Modern as time goes on. There's no question about that, and that's great. So all the things that right now we feel aren't given, Modern doesn't have this, or that, and Classic has those things, you're probably going to get them or versions of those things in the future. And if not, you're going to get other features that Classic would never have, period. So you can at least justify moving to Modern for some of the big ticket websites. And, I'm always an ROI type of guy. Like, this amount of effort is going to impact 2,000 people versus this amount of effort is going to impact 20 people. Let the 20 people deal with it themselves, and I'll deal with the big audience and save. If I save one person there 1 minute of time every day, that's that many thousands of minutes saved, man minutes saved. So go through a priority list of these are the things we have to rebuild, and what does rebuild mean? Some rebuilds are huge. Some rebuilds are just drag and drop some stuff across the page and it's no big deal, right? And how you deliver that out, whether you're giving it to a 10-year veteran developer or if you're giving it to an intern, you can definitely prioritize how you do that.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Yeah, and with migrations, I sort of mean like, not we have to move everything. Maybe there's like, maybe we're just starting out, or maybe we just want to kind of get our feet wet in the modern pages and sites and the modern experience. So yeah, there's so many aspects to this that you kind of hit on a lot of them, and I appreciate that. Mike, what do you have any take on this?
Yeah, very, very similar to what Matt Jared had mentioned. Just don't, because Modern is there, and just say, let's migrate to Modern, just to have to justify why you're migrating. Technically, if you are on team sites, everything from a document library and list perspective, you can switch on to Modern right away. If you really would love to have that Modern team site page experience, you can still go and create a page. So you're on a team site, you create a page, it will create you a Modern page in a team site, and you can make that page your home page. And then you can start looking at and adding those SPF export parts into it. So because I do a lot of migration is a huge effort, and usually when you want to do migration, there is a reason that you want to move into a different platform. If you are I've done a lot of acquisition migration, so companies merging or a company acquiring a different company. So in that case, yes, it is time to do the migration, and I always say, okay, go Modern sites and migrate your documents and lists into the Modern sites. From a pages perspective, unfortunately, right now, if you are on a publishing site and you want to migrate your pages into a Modern communication site, I'm not aware of any way to do that from a pages perspective. But from a document library and lists and anything in the back end and calendars and the customers, everything you have other than pages, it is pretty easy to migrate if you have to go through the process. But from a pages perspective, you have to have a good justification. And if you are on a publishing site on a global intranet and you want to go into Modern, it's basically an intranet revamp at that point, and it's not a migration.
Right. Thanks. Yeah. So a lot of great points there. On what I found, I don't do migrations. That's what I I'm not the migration guy, so I really can't go into that. But I did pull this up. So somebody was asking, well, how do we convert maybe our existing classic site into modern? And this is over a year old, so but I don't think it has changed. But Chris McNulty says exactly what you said, Mike. You could go into the library, you can create a modern page,
Yeah, exactly.
and you can set that as the homepage, and then you could play around with it. That way. So it's one way.
It's still valid. So you still can do it. Yeah, it hasn't changed.
Yeah. So yeah, and I tried it. Obviously, it worked. I wouldn't have put it on the slide, but so that's what we have for you tonight. I mean, we covered a lot of areas. We had a lot of great insight from all of our panel members. Are there any other questions that maybe you didn't get to ask, or you don't want to ask? If you want to send it in the window, we can answer it later. Or you want to follow up with email, that's fine as well. And you know how to reach out to me on the meetup site. Doesn't look like there's any more questions. Hopefully this was useful. I know it was a lot of information. We're on for an hour and a half and we're going over. But I'd like to thank you. Thank everybody for listening. Yeah, I like the different points of view from everybody, so I felt like this was a nice meetup. Again, going in future meetups to just do my 2 cents on. So we cannot create a subsite in modern site collection. You can create subsites in modern, but they are classic. They come out in classic. So that's to answer that. Again, just a quick wrap up on the meetup. If you're part of the group, please go and give us feedback. Help us spread the word. Share the events online. Attend. Make sure you RSVP. Again, we're online now, so if you don't show, it's not a big deal, but I like to have it accurate. So help us get the word out, participate, ask questions, send in suggestions. If you're interested in something or you want to present something, be happy to help facilitate that. You can always reach out to me. Again, here's the meetup site. I locked it down, so you have to be a member because I really want people to kind of feel like there's a thing going on here that we have. I want to build a little private little user group here. So even though this whole recording's going online after I clean it up, but then thanks for all the panel members. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to meet with us. It's a lot. It's Wednesday night. It's an hour and a half. So thank you. I owe you guys a beer at some point in the future. And again, here's the contact information for Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and stay tuned. I'll post it up and you all get announcements.
Nice. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, everyone, for joining.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Take care, guys.
All right.